Woo! What's going on? There's that song again.
There's the same song. No, it's a great, fun song, and it's a great entrance to come in. It's just to a nice little jingle.
It's a nice jingle for the very jingle holiday that's coming up on us. We have a very special guest with us. Matt, do you want to introduce our guest?
I would love to. I have with us. We made the time, we made the effort, and we have Dustin Ferguson with us, writer, director, producer, editor, man of many hats, and kind of does it all. Welcome to the show, Dustin. Welcome to VodPod.
Thanks for having me, guys. It is an honor.
Oh
The
yeah,
honors all ours, actually. You're our first guest, so
yeah. So this is pretty cool for us.
Well, it's cool for me too to be the first guest.
Oh yeah. Well, definitely, and it's very relevant too because we watched A Taste of Phobia this past week, which had one of your short films in it, and
Yes.
I particularly really enjoyed it. The whole anthology. It was very like just gripping, intense, creepy. There's a little bit of humor. It was just kind of a good blend of a lot of different filmmakers. From the get go.
Definitely.
yeah, there's gonna be some I'm gonna still be thinking about probably like a month from now that really rubbed me the wrong way. Which it did its job. But before we get into that, why don't we just talk really quickly about if we've seen anything that that's worth talking about. Dustin, would you like to go first?
Sure. As far as on VOD, I actually just watched the Necropolis Legion, the new Full
Oh,
Moon Deadly 10.
how was it?
Well, okay, so I will say, like, I loved Ouija's. I thought it was fun. I thought they did the most that they could with the budget, and it was just real entertaining watch. Like it was never boring. I think
Right.
that was almost like the opposite with this one because I thought it was a well-made film. It was artistically shot. It was well acted, good effects, but most of them it's exactly 61 minutes long, and most of the movie is her like possessed in a cabin completely by herself, like with no very little dialogue. And so
Oh,
it's sort of like sets up like in the very beginning there's like a flashback sequence that like kind of gives you the backstory, and then we jumped. So I wasn't sure at first. I was like, oh, is this like a period piece? But then like it gets like a few minutes into it and we jump to this girl today that's like a she wrote a book about that stuff that happened in the past, and she's doing like a book signing at like a sort of dark delicacies kind of situation, and she's meeting her fans and everything. And then Laurie has a cameo appearance from the Crazies
oh,
and I Drink
wow.
Your Blood. Yeah, yeah. So she shows up and she's like a crazy religious woman that warns her she's tapping into evil and she needs to stay away and all that. And she's like, well, screw you. I'm staying at the cabin where it all happened for my next book, anyways. And
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, so then she goes out there, and then that's literally the rest of the movie. Like at about 20 minutes in, she goes out there, and then it's a good 40 minutes of her like withering around on the floor and convulsing on the bed. And it's like,
Oh, this sounds wild.
yeah, I mean,
The
it's like I could see where they were going with it. I just don't, I gotta like watch it again. It was sort of like I just felt it had a weak script. Like they had a good premise and a good setup, and once you got to the cabin, it sort of just it became kind of a bore fest. To be honest, it was like,
Oh, so kind
okay,
of
10
maybe
minutes
slow
of
down
her
the
with it.
pace. Right.
I don't
Right.
know the
Yeah.
poster I'm looking at. She's coming back. She's got mouths as nipples. Uh,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
pretty
And
intrigued.
that was definitely the highlight of the movie. I mean, I'm sure that's what everyone's going to remember from it because the main, I guess they're vampires. I'm not even clear if they're witches or vampires
Right.
now.
Some kind of
But
succubus or something.
yeah, yeah. She like has the mouth for her nipples, and that's some cool effects. Like there's some really cool sequences with that, and it's sort of like in the
Oh,
beginning and end of the movie, but it's like in the flashback stuff.
okay. That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check this out because yeah, I'm no longer subscribed to Full Moon at the moment, but I plan to get back on it so that I can, you know, catch up on the Deadly Ten as Blade, comes out this month and so
Right.
forth. So that's which you were on set for Blade.
Yeah, I was there every day. I was an assistant on second unit with Brooks Davis, and I'm actually in it too. I acted in two different parts. Actually, I had to be a stand-in for Noel Jason Scott. He had a death scene, and he wasn't there for the inserts of his hand being attacked by Blade, so they had to use my hand. So that was kind of fun. Like wrestle around with Blade with my hand, and he like pierces through my hand. There's pictures all over the internet. He pierces through my hand with the spikes and everything, and it was kind of fun. And then I got to have an actual on-screen part where in like the newsroom sequence, they have like a newsroom they cut to throughout the movie where like things are happening and the story's progressing with the main character, and I'm like the lead. I don't even know what it is now. He's like the lead news reporter. I like bring in the news story to the front desk, so I have some close-ups and stuff. So it's really exciting for me because it's a Puppet Master movie, and that's the stuff I grew up on. It's sort of like a dream come true just to be involved.
Awesome. That really is awesome, dude. I can't wait to see that one. I mean, just the fact that you got to be a part of it. I could see my friend in the movie, but also it's just Blade is the puppet that I think everyone would always want to see, like his own little movie.
Definitely. And I'm sure it's going to be the start of spin-offs for all the puppets, so it's pretty cool to be in the first one. And like I said, just to even be, I didn't expect when I was working on it to actually appear in the film. It was sort of one of those like last minute things. And actually I got to give a shout out to Alan Maxon, because it's thanks to him that I got involved in that. He kind of pulled me into the scene where I'm actually featured. He's like, hey, they need people. He actually told me a day ahead. He's like, if you got a white collared shirt and some slacks, bring them tomorrow, because we're going to need extras for the newsroom scene. I'm like, okay, got it. And then I forgot them. Like the next day I get there, and he comes up to me. He's like, okay, we're doing that scene. And, you got your slacks and your shirt. And I'm like, oh, crap. I was like, I didn't even think about it this morning, because they were super long sets. I had to get up at like 4 a.m. to drive 4 hours in traffic to get there before 9, to then work until 5 or 6 at night and drive 4 hours home, get like 2 hours of sleep, do it over again. So I was completely like fried at this point. It was like the last day of filming. And so luckily he's like, well, go to the costumes. They might have some extras. And so I go back there the first time, and I'm talking to the costume girl. I'm like, hey, I forgot my shirt and slacks, and they're looking for extras. Do you happen to have any? And she's like, no. I was like, oh, okay, well, that sucks. Thanks anyways. So I like walked away, and then Alan comes up to me and he's like, so did you get some slacks and stuff? And I'm like, no, she said that they didn't have any. It's fine. Don't worry. I'll take pictures of you in the scene. Don't worry. And he's like, no, come with me. So he takes me and he goes back into the costume room. He's like, so you don't have any shirts or slacks? And she's like, oh, I didn't know what he was talking about. Yeah, I got some right here. So then I got to put him on, and then I got to be in the scene. So it was really cool of him to do that for me.
Oh, that's great. Well, I can't wait to see that movie. I mean, yeah, Full Moon's awesome. We watched Hideous for one of the episodes before, and that was a fun time.
Oh, fun. Yeah. There's some great stuff in their library. I mean, they're known for obviously Puppet Master, but there's also like Demonic Toys, which is my personal favorite.
Yeah, that's a great one.
I've embarrassingly only seen the first Puppet Master. I once bought one of those like Puppet Masters 1 through 5 DVDs, and yeah. I watched the first one, and I don't think at the time I was ready for it. But I'd like to. I think they're all on Tubi. I'd like to go back and like. Yeah, like I would love to like see the evolution of them. I've seen some crazy titles they have that I'm just like, wow, like Puppet Master like 7. It sounds awesome. I would love to.
Yeah, they have. I mean, 1 through 5. I think Dustin and the others that I know have hailed. Like 1 through 5 are the ones it seems the fans really love. And after that, it's sort of they sort of change a little. I've noticed, and they kind of take a little different approach sometimes. But I mean, they're still entertaining, just a little different, I would say.
Well, there was sort of like. Well, and Matt knows because he helped work on this. I did a documentary called Direct to Video, and in it, Jeff Bird, who directed parts 4 and 5, Puppet Master 4 and 5, talks about them and mentions that those ones originally were one film meant for theatrical distribution through Paramount. And last minute, they pulled the plug on the theatrical distribution, so they had to go and pad out the movies and turn them into 2 movies for video. Ooh. And I think that yeah, when that happened after part 5 came out, it sort of killed the series as far as getting good financing. So from that point forward, they started doing more clips movies, flashback movies, like movies that were spin-offs, because I think that they were having trouble getting good financing for Puppet Masters. And it wasn't really until about 10 years ago that they kind of brought them back again, and they've been trying to revamp it. And I think that this newest one, Blade, is a nice fresh start because it's like an origin story and it's really well done. And I think so far, like the Deadly 10 movies have been pretty good. So I think it's going to be one of the good ones.
Definitely. Yeah, Tim, did you have a film? Just branch off anything VOD, like full moon related?
I was going to talk about how I saw Transfers for the first time, I was so happy to find out that it was a Christmas movie.
Dude, yeah.
But I'm actually not going to talk about that.
The music audience awes right there. Oh.
I'm going to talk about the Christmas Chronicles with my boy Kurt Russell. Where he played, Snake Plissken plays Santa Claus. I saw this came out in 2018, and I saw this advertised on Netflix. It's a Netflix original film, and I wasn't, for some reason, like the poster didn't do it for me. Like it did not pass my poster test. But this year, I got that Christmas bug, and I was just like, I've been looking all over Hulu. Their selection is kind of weak this year, but Netflix, I came across Christmas Chronicles, and I gotta say, this movie surprised me so much. Kurt Russell's easily the best part. He plays a great Santa Claus, and he plays like an alternative Santa Claus, like just how I would imagine.
It's kind of hip, isn't he? Kind of
yeah. Like there's like a reoccurring joke where they're like, "Say ho ho ho," and he's like, I don't do that. That's a myth." And it's like, it throws a really nice curveballs. Winston from New Girl's in it. I just had a really good time with it. I was very, very surprised. It starts out a little bit kind of like cliche. I mean, it's not rough. Like it's a pretty well polished movie, but once it gets going, I highly suggest it. So if you're looking for like a nice like family Christmas movie, this is definitely it.
Well, that's great to hear, because I remember when that film came out last year on Netflix. I was like, oh, Kurt Russell. I didn't watch it, but I like Kurt Russell, so I was like interested. I watched the trailer last year, and then this year, the other day, I watched the trailer again. So hopefully I watched it one day.
You probably watched the trailer more than anyone.
Today or something, or yesterday.
What was that?
They announced a sequel, I think just today or yesterday to it.
Yeah, no way.
Dustin, you're totally right. You're totally right. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
that's
dude.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that was like today, right?
I think it was this morning. Yeah, my days get blurred, but I think it was this morning.
Yeah, it's like impeccable timing, Tim. You better.
Damn, my finger's not on the pulse. I also want to say that there's a really great like CGI part with like elves that I didn't expect. It was kind of like everything smashed into one. So, but I'll be there the minute I see that poster. I'm gonna watch the second one.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to check out the first one of these days before Christmas, I guess.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but I got a fun one that I watched. I watched this yesterday night, kind of late. It's from 2003. To my knowledge, it did not have a theatrical release. Maybe in South Korea it did, but it looks like it was film, DVD premiere, TV premiere. Yeah. It's called Dead End with Ray Wise and Lin Shaye.
I love that movie.
Oh my gosh, dude! I was amazed by this movie.
A lot of people don't like it. It's really hated, but I got it when it was a brand new release, and I've loved it.
Oh, that is so cool, man! Because it's a very unique kind of horror film. You know, the way it like has kind of bizarre humor that you don't really expect, and it's just really violent too, out of like kind of nowhere at certain parts, and just great acting too. I mean, great movie. Just to give you guys a little synopsis, anyone that doesn't know what that movie is, or Tim, if you've never heard of it, it is technically a Christmas movie.
I'm watching it.
Christmas Eve, on his way to his in-laws with his family, Frank Harrington decides to try a shortcut for the first time in 20 years. It turns out to be the biggest mistake of his life. And that's barely skimming the surface of that movie, but it's called Dead End, and it's great. Dustin was ahead of the curve on that one.
Well, that
like
movie. Well, yeah, I think that movie, it's interesting for me because it came out. Okay, so like I was just finishing college then, and I remember there was this sort of wave of horror in the early 2000s that started with House, Thousand Corpses, and then there was Cabin Fever, and there was Open Water, and there was High Tension, and those were all Lionsgate produced and released movies. And then they started doing some more that were direct to DVD, and Dead End was one of the first ones. So I was sort of like following their whole like wave that they were doing, and I just remember following the press for that and how exciting I was because, like you said, Lin Shaye's in that, and Ray Wise, and all these people that are sort of like, you know, character actors from back in the day. And so it was a very nostalgic feeling horror movie, even when it came out when it was new.
Right. That's so cool, man. Yeah, because it has a great atmosphere to it.
It does, and it's very intriguing, like you said.
Yeah, and they do a few smart things with the special effects where they don't quite show it completely, you know, and they have like the characters' reactions sort of telling what really happened to that person or thing, like, and I really liked that about it.
Right.
Yeah, made it like really resourceful.
I just added it on my Tubi list.
Oh yeah, that's where I watched it as well on Tubi. Just a few ads, but you know, I
Is it
totally.
widescreen on Tubi?
What's up?
Is it widescreen on Tubi?
It looked widescreen to me, yeah.
Because the DVD that they put out was that was like in the early 2000s, and they were still doing a lot of full screen DVDs. Like they did a full screen of that and the full screen of the Toolbox Murders remake. I remember, so aggravating.
Oh yeah, no, I do. Well, that's what I kind of like about Blu-ray is like a lot of the time it's just all these like widescreen, you know, almost only
Yeah.
widescreen. But
I still buy like cheap DVDs, and sometimes like I won't look close enough. Like one time I bought Batman Begins, and I brought it home from like Big Lots or something, and I like brought it home and it was full screen, and it was like 2014 when I bought it. I was like, it was the most shocking thing to me because I got so used to widescreen. But some, if you're okay with it, you can always like some like if you watch stuff on like your PS4, you can like you can stretch it, like you can zoom in so it is full screen, but then you crop some of the picture. That's probably
Yeah.
sacrilegious.
Well, you know, in a movie like with that one, you really want to see, because I'm sure it was shot in like 2.40, which is like a really wide lens. And so you really want to get the whole imagery, because if they're going full screen with that, it's got to be like a third of the image. And so it kind of sucks. I think like I know that happened a lot with the Saw movies. Like it was real popular to get full screen versions in all the stores. I remember that was always really like
hey,
annoying.
no,
But like
totally, I remember that.
yeah, yeah. But like what is interesting about like you're talking about Big Lots is they have a lot of those old discounted DVDs from like, you know, the late 90s and early 2000s. And if you get like the 90s horror movies, those were made like shot in open matte full screen anyways. And so actually if you get those DVDs of those movies, like you're getting it the way it was made versus when they did put it on a Blu-ray and actually crop it.
Pro tip right there, VodPod. That is like that's a
Yeah, right.
that's such a cool little bit of trivia.
I like that.
And like a perfect example is Demonic Toys. Like it's a full screen movie by Full Moon because it was made in the 90s. And if you get the budget DVDs of it that they have in those bargain bins, you get the full screen print. But the Blu-ray, they've remastered it, but they've, you know, cropped off the top and bottom. So if you're a purist, you know, you want to get it the way it's made.
Right, right. See, yeah, that's so cool.
I'm definitely a
So, I
purist.
mean,
That's why I only watch Batman Begins in full screen.
so yeah, those are some good watches, you know, as of late, you know. I think to get into our episode of a little taste of phobia, and we do have a piece of that taste yeah with us, so that's kind of cool. And in particular, Dustin, do you want to talk and preface a little bit about your film? Is it Mazeophobia? Mazephobia?
Yeah, Mazeophobia, which is It's not the fear of mazes, believe it or not. It's the fear of getting lost. And that was something I talked to Matt a little bit about prior, was that it's sadly a little mismarketed in that anthology, because I think it even says fear of mazes underneath the Mazeophobia. But
Yeah.
so a lot of people watching it think it's like poorly executed because there's no mazes. They're just like, what? And it's like, no, it's about this guy getting lost, and it's like got racism overtones, and I'm trying to like, tap into all these things with it, but I think it just it got lost in translation.
No
No,
pun
but
intended.
no pun intended. Well, I was gonna say I like that plot a lot too, because that is I think a fear that a lot of people kind of have is being lost. Like if you're away from, like, just being away from home and on the road, and maybe something happens to your car or something, or
Right.
like in his case, getting really low on gas and missing the last station. It's like, that's a terrifying thing in itself. So, and then when you're in an area like, where there's, prejudice and bad, kind of bad views, where you're looked at as like an enemy or a problem. It's, it's a really cool little short, and it's also an interesting ending too. And I don't know if you want to get into spoilers, but I thought that the ending really surprised me.
Same here. Same here.
Well, yeah. Okay, so this was, I think it just came out in the last year, but it was actually shot a couple years ago. And the interesting thing about this, okay, so it's an international anthology, and I believe I'm the only American director. And so it was at the beginning of the Trump era. So I wanted to do something that was very timely, that would be like people could look back on and be like the American stamp, like where the American culture was at that time. And so we are all like anti-immigration. People were talking about, building the wall and all this crazy stuff. And it's like, I wanted to make something about that, but like to the horror extreme, like from his perspective, because he's, in the segment, he's Hispanic, and he doesn't speak very good English. And so he's having trouble with the signs and his directions. And so, of course, being stuck in the Bible Belt, he's at a hick bar, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll help you, Mr. Mexican, like it's very, it plays on all that. But I feel like they didn't, it's not presented well enough in the advertising materials in the way that it is titled and all that. But I think that that's sort of what I was going for. And with the twist, it's very racy, so to speak, because the tables are turned for sure.
Right, right. No, I like that. And I think what not only you did, but it's pretty, I think, consistent throughout the whole film of all those different international directors, is that there was something that sort of like, it was like bold, or like, it really, they all had a message, which was cool, and sometimes some films don't do that or push that. So I really liked that. Everybody
I
went for it.
I agree with that. I think for me, like even though there was a little bit of a miscommunication on in terms of like the title, I with these anthologies, I've seen like VHS. I think there was one called Holidays where Kevin Smith
Yeah.
made one. I've seen a handful of these, and it's always a treat when you get a little bit of a trick in terms of like, 'cause, these are only like 5 to 10 minutes long, and there's not much to build a really deep story. There's not much, and they always start with a title. So for me, when I saw Fear of Mazes, and then it was actually a totally different interpretation of, getting lost, I thought that was really cool. I was really glad to not have to see like someone getting lost in a corn maze, like
Yeah, same.
Right.
so in a way it did work. It's kind of interesting that, not even having known that there was a miscommunication, I still really enjoyed it. And I agree with you guys. I mean, that ending, I didn't see that coming. I thought it was kind of like going to end in a grim way, and then it like turned, and it was and like it was kind of funny but also like really awesome. So
Yeah,
I thought that was a
right,
really
right.
powerful like ending.
Well, thank
I
you.
agree.
I'm glad to hear that, like from someone, because, you know, and everybody knows, like on the internet, it's like, okay, like I always use the restaurant analogy. If you go somewhere and have a good experience, you don't really tell anybody. But if you go somewhere and have a bad experience, you go tell everybody. And so people that don't like, that anthology or that segment are always very vocal about it. And so it sucks, as the director of a lot of these B movies, all you really see is the negative stuff. And so I hear a lot of people that are just it's lost on them, or they hated it, or they thought it was spiteful. Or it's interesting to actually, and refreshing to hear someone that's like, no, I thought it was cool. I mean, just to hear that, you know what I mean? It's really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's one of
Yeah,
the reasons why we do this. We know how like easy it is to bash a movie that was made on a low budget or made with limited resources, but realistically, I mean, how many people have actually made something that's out on like Amazon Prime or out on Netflix or something like that? So one of our missions is kind of like to watch this stuff and watch it looking out for the good stuff because there's in fact not only your short film, but a lot of these films had really awesome moments that I am curious to kind of get to if we all could like if there was one that really stood out to you out of all. I think there was 14 or 15 of them, but there was a lot of really great moments in this, and I think you're right. It is very easy to kind of watch this and like talk about all the bad things about it, but if you kind of take a step back, it's a really cool anthology, and especially the fact that it's international directors. That's pretty cool.
yeah, dude. Because when you take that step back and like when you look at a normal movie and you're like, it takes a village, but then you take all the villages that make the one movie. You know what I mean? All the different movies that have the villages making those movies. It's a lot of villages to make an anthology. So I think that's super cool.
And I thought it was
Uh,
cool. Some villages were smaller than others. Like watching the credits of the film, which by the way, this the sound the like song in the back of the credits was so sick. Um,
yeah, they had some cool stuff going on with credits.
I was like really impressed to see like some films were shot with like three people, like some like shot, directed, edited, and then like just a couple of actors. Like I thought that was cool. Like not everything requires a huge cast to make something effective.
Well, that's Dustin too, and wouldn't you say, Dustin? I mean, that's your whole background is as well as a DIY like you know small skeleton crews to get stuff done, and that's where you kind of came from, right?
Oh yeah, well, I think everybody starts out small in the beginning, and then they kind of grow in a certain direction. And I've been very like close knit, because of my upbringing in the Midwest, and I have like a pool of friends and people that I know and trust and always work with because it just always seems to work out best that way. So it's sort of definitely been my formula to kind of keep a close group of people for all these projects. And you're one of them.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that, and I enjoy it too. It's a fun. I think it's a really fun, good group of people, to work with and to know, and and
Definitely.
and Tim actually, it's funny too. Tim didn't know this at first, but well, like Tim was brought on to help me with some music on some of Dustin's movies, and
Oh
so
shit.
it's kind of funny that Tim didn't, hadn't known Dustin yet or met him
Wait,
yet.
wait, wait. He did. Is this so I know him through like working with you on this stuff? Like what movies?
Yeah, so Tim played bass for me on some songs that were in Blood Beast, and he also
Oh, that's cool.
yeah,
It's
and
nice
so
to meet you.
It's nice to meet you. Well, there's so many people in this biz. I never make
and
the connections right, but I'm glad to know it's you.
and also this is the best one. He provided a huge part of the score for Jaws of LA, the upcoming film, which has a premiere in 20.
So he's seen it then, huh?
I haven't
Actually, no,
actually.
he hasn't. It's a really cool kind of funny way of just Tim writes great music and he always has, and he used to do a lot of YouTube stuff with movies and music, and basically Tim lent me some songs that he wrote that I already in my head was like, I know Tim writes amazing music and I know the tones that he hits, and I think that it would give, a kind of score feel to some of these beach scenes, that it was like a summer movie. So uh, Tim's guitar playing, drums, all that stuff, it's I think an amazing addition to that movie. So I'm excited for him to see it. I feel bad though that he hasn't seen it yet because I didn't
Oh,
I didn't send him the film over. It was a real quick transaction.
No,
I
it's
know
so
what the whole
cool.
damn thing was. So
It's so cool because those songs were never gonna go anywhere. I had written them and I had writer's block and I like made a loop and I just closed it and never saw them again. And then Matt was like, "Quick, I need some songs. Do you have anything I could use?" And I had those. So yeah, I'm really excited to see it. That's
Do you
awesome.
live locally? Where do you?
I'm in New York.
Oh.
He's on the other side of
You
the
will be
country.
attending that premiere.
That's what's so cool about it, though, is coast to coast. Tim and
So
I did YouTube stuff back in a few years back too.
Oh, nice.
yeah, I helped
Fun.
Matt on his film Jason Thunder as well.
Yeah, Tim did some amazing music for that film too. So
So, Dustin, you want to just like take us through like how this kind of came about? So you said you made this actually like a couple like years ago. But how did you get to be a part of this anthology, and how did it end up eventually on Amazon? Like, does this actually have a physical release as well?
Yeah, I'm actually holding the DVD in my hands right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, just because we're talking about it. But yeah, no, it's interesting. So this it was like a couple years ago, right before I moved to California. Was involved in various anthologies with this guy named Tony Newton. He produced the grindsploitation films that were put out by Trauma. And so I first got involved with him with grindsploitation 2. I did a segment for that, and then I ended up being in part 4 and 6 and 8 actually. And so we did a lot of stuff together. And one of the directors he was working with, I don't want to butcher his name, but it's Damazanio Cristofario. He's Italian. And he was producing this one called A Taste of Phobia. And he was looking for an American director to fill that spot. And since he knew who I was and had seen my work, he just reached out to me and asked if I'd be willing to do a segment for like a profit split. And so I said that that was cool with me, and that I've been doing a lot of the anthology segments lately, so it was no problem to do it. And I did it, and it surprisingly, it got done right away. It came out, has a really cool trailer. If you haven't seen the trailer, check out the trailer. But then it came out everywhere, and it's on DVD. And we all got royalty payments right away when it came out too. So it was a pretty awesome deal for everybody.
That's sick.
yeah, that is sick, dude. And actually, if you're in the LA area, I know for sure that Dark Delicacies used to have like 2 copies, or they had a copy at one point too on DVD. So I always think it's cool when Dark
Best Buy
Delicacies.
has it, and so does FYE, like in the actual stores.
Oh, that's
nice.
great, dude. Yeah, I love that.
I think I bought mine at Best Buy, I'm pretty sure. So
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because it's great when, when you have access to the independent horror films in the stores. That says you guys are doing something right.
well, and it's a milestone for someone like me when you're an independent director and you're moving up the ladder. It's to have a movie of yours sitting on the store shelf. That's what everybody dreams of, and then it's just the day it happens, it's sort of surreal. Just there it is. It's like your heart skips a beat. It's like, oh my god, there's my name on something in the store. It's a good feeling.
Definitely, that's so cool. Yeah. So, Tim, did you have any other follow-ups about?
Yeah. Was there? I just want to know what each person's favorite short was, because I think there was a lot of really cool stuff, and I mean, I can just start it off. I mean, one of the ones that still like sticks with me is the Fear of Sleeping short.
Dude, that's what Dustin and I know. Dustin knows
Mike. Michael short? Michael and Sophia?
Yeah.
I didn't even know who they were. I didn't meet them yet when I was involved in this. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah, because dude, Tim, that was the one I was gonna say too. Because then I was shout out Michael and Sophia, because I was gonna be like, oh, that's a cool because dude, that one was made really well as well, and I really liked sort of the tension. But I'll let you go on, Tim. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it was just, we've all been there. I mean, if you work in the creative industry, you understand what it's like to like struggling to pull an all-nighter, and like when you're fighting to go to sleep. And I thought it was even creepier when the woman showed up and was like, yeah, he's not going to be going to sleep anytime soon. Like that is terrifying. So for me, I thought the idea of that was interesting. Again, I think a lot of these, actually all of them, were very clever in their interpretation of what they were given. So the fear of falling asleep, of course, you could have just done like you know, the fear of
Laying in
falling
bed,
asleep.
yeah,
Yeah,
laying in
yeah.
bed, like being
Which
like rocking and rolling, kind of.
Which even, I mean, it's funny you say that, the fear of dreams one. I thought that was an
Oh,
interesting
yeah,
approach as well. It was just, it's like, yes, that was as simple as laying in bed, but it was also like it got weirder and weirder, and the ending was disturbing. Like overall, I think that disturbing uh, was definitely carried throughout like all of these. So yeah, for me, the sleep one was the one I'll probably think about.
yeah, because you guys all really brought, you guys all brought your A game stepped up because that was a lot. They were all unique takes on what they were, like even to the political one where it was like about voting and stuff, where they're just yelling the whole time. Do you guys remember that one?
That was
That
disturbing
was
too.
Mason Bell, actually. He did that one. He's the
Oh,
one rebooting Tree Forest.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask actually if that was his because I thought I saw him in it. Maybe like was he in it at any part or maybe
Yeah,
not?
I believe he's in that. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, he's just to give Tim a preface. Sam is gonna that director of that one is gonna be like rebooting one of Dustin's your first film, first
Yeah.
feature,
My first feature. Yep.
Oh, nice.
Terror at Black Tree Forest.
Yes.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, that's for 2020. But yeah. So I'm sorry. Dustin, did you have any other favorites aside from your own? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I don't want to be biased because, I'm looking at this now. I realize I actually know over half the directors. Like I've worked
I
with
was gonna
all of
say
them.
you probably
It's,
do know most of them.
yeah, it's crazy because like Jason Empey, because I have to talk about his was The Fear of Feces, which I'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll
But
never forget that one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. See, like he directed a segment in VHS Violence for me, I think in 1 and 2. And so like I've worked with him and he did some of the fake commercials and Wrong Side of the Tracks and Runaway Nightmare. And
Cool.
so I've worked with him. Obviously I worked with Dom and other anthologies. And then there's Michael and Sophia and then Sam Mason Bell. So it's crazy. Like I know all these people, but yeah, The Fear of Feces. I think that one is the crazy. I think I wouldn't say it's the best of the bunch, but it's definitely the one that stands out to me the most that I can't stop thinking about because it was just so ridiculous. And it's very gross. It's a very gross episode. But what is cool about it is the guy, that main actor, I believe that's Martin Payne. And he is the producer, one of my producers on Robo Woman and Direct to Video. He's that HB Films logo, Matt, that is at the beginning of those
No
movies.
way. Is it really?
Isn't it such a small world? We're all connected. It's
That
crazy.
is such a small world because I had no clue that was his company. I always wondered who that was whenever I saw that at the beginning of your movies when
Yeah.
I'm mixing it or
British
whatever.
company.
I'm like,
Yeah.
who is HB? I'm trying to look them up. I can't find anybody with that name. It's like I don't know who this is. That's really cool. So Martin Payne, yeah, no, he was good in that, dude. I mean, that's a courageous role too.
Yeah.
I always say
Yeah.
for roles like that, that's like very demanding
Well, he's
and
okay.
that's
So it's interesting because that was the first one I saw him act in. And I was like, oh, kind of like watching that. But then it was funny because that was when I was doing a bunch of those anthologies, and then a bunch more came out around the same time. Like 60 Seconds to Die 2 was one of them, and To Die For was another one. And he was involved in other segments in those anthologies as well as in VHS Violence. And he's like oh God, if he's listening to this, I don't want him to hate me, but I think he's into SNL because he's
oh
into very.
we can leave that out though. Don't worry about that.
Oh no,
Yeah,
it's
but
fine. I don't think he cares because he openly does it. He's in it
oh,
because that's what he does. In all the movie roles, he does stuff like that where he's like tortured or like put through something grueling. But it's interesting because I think that he's a theater actor by trade. So it's interesting that he really goes there. He really can pull off what those roles require.
wow, yeah, no, I can only imagine because I would think, yeah, I mean that it takes probably a level of trust too with the people you're working with and just like being comfortable.
Because I think it
So
was in 60 Seconds to Die too. He's like in a barrel of water, that's sealed, and it's it's like a drowning theme one or something. It was crazy, you know, and it's like that's an
Oh.
artist.
Yeah, no, acting is got to be the, you know, as they say in one of the movie meme groups on Facebook, they say the actors make the damn movie. So
Yeah.
Well, I think his bit as well was one of those ones that I was mentioning that had a small cast and crew. So, and you could definitely, I mean, what I liked about that one was it's not about the quality of your camera. Like,
Right.
sure,
It's
you bring in, yeah, you like bring in some green gel lights, and you can't build a set, so it's crammed in a bathroom, and it kind of added to it. It was like on top of being disturbing, the quality of it added to how just upsetting that clip was. So, job well done, for sure. I'm kind of with you on that, Dustin. I'll probably never forget that one either.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the bear, the like the feces bear that comes out of the toilet after him, like was simple, but like you said, when you commit with what you have, you know, it is based in the performance too, and the performance is there. So, you know, that's cool.
Definitely. Yeah, I think all the directors definitely brought something unique to it for sure.
Yeah, agreed.
I honestly, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure we all had the same reaction. Like, I literally like looked at the at at my TV, and I was like, "Is that a bear? Hold on."
Yeah.
For like at least 5 minutes.
I had to pause it the first time. I was like, "What?"
Yeah, that was.
Matt, how about you?
Oh, well, that's what I was saying. Was either that one, the one we just talked about, the feces one, or the one with Michael J. Epstein,
Right.
Sophia, the fear of sleeping. So, how do you say Sophia's last name?
Cacchiola?
Cacchiola.
I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't want to butcher it, so
Right.
yeah, I think So, but yeah, they're short. I also really liked, and Dustin's, of course. You know, we wouldn't have you on if we didn't like it. So I mean,
Sure.
yeah, no, I like like we already kind of talked about, but I really like the approach to that because it was like Tim was kind of saying, unsuspecting, and yeah, and I like the ending a lot. That really surprised me.
And I gotta, you know, the people I cast, and I gotta give a shout out, like Edwin Garcia. You know, he was the star, and he was also in Nemesis 5, and he's been in a lot of my other things. I thought he did a great job. And then, of course, we had at the twist ending, we have Clint Beaver and Daniel Steer, and they were perfect in their roles too. So they brought a lot to that.
Definitely. Yeah, no, that was good. And like what was I gonna say? Did you get that location? How did you get the bar location to shoot at? Was that pretty
That's
just
the bar from Nemesis. That's the zoo bar.
Oh,
I actually. Yeah, it's so crazy because, okay, I had done some music videos for this band, Black Plague, and he played all the time at the Zoo Bar, and we filmed one of his videos there. And while I was there, I talked to him, I was like, you know, so do you just get this location? And he like knew the owner, and he's like, oh, I can hook you up. And so I talked to her about how I needed a location for that phobia segment, and she's like, oh yeah, come on down or whatever. And so I did, and I filmed the segment there in the bar scene. And then I talked to her, I was like, you know, I'm doing this feature Nemesis 5. And then she agreed to that too. So we filmed both things there.
That's awesome.
That's
yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, guy, because at the end of the credits, I saw it was called Phobia. When you signed on to this, was it originally called Phobia, or when it came out, was that the first time that you saw it was called A Taste of Phobia, or do you know where that kind of happened?
Okay, so here's a little insider information for you guys. It was originally called Phobia, and the original poster was totally different, and it just said Phobia on it. But the reason, I haven't been told this, but I know this from experience, that the reason it's been retitled to A Taste of Phobia is because it starts with the letter A, and you want that for VOD because it's at the top of everybody's list. And so if you think about P, that's way down in the middle towards the bottom. People aren't even going to get to that browsing for movies. So every distributor I've ever worked with that deals with VOD, they figure out a way to make your movie start with A, B, or C.
That's awesome.
Dang, that's crazy.
And most people don't know that because it's just sort of like an insider thing with VOD distribution. But yeah, it's kind of been a thing for like the last 10 years. I know a lot of people, like my friend Dorothy Borum, she made a movie called Wake the Witch that obviously starts with a W. So they had her retitle it to Awaken the Witch. So it starts with
Oh my.
You know what's
Wow.
funny? I'm looking at my Tubi list of all the movies I want to watch, and it literally is A, B, C, and D. That's I've never really realized that. Oh my God.
Wow. It's just the
because most
proof is
people
right
are
in
just
front.
going to give up. They'll give up around M, before they even get there because they're like, okay, I'll just watch this. They're not going to go all the way to Z. You know what I mean? So people that are foolish enough to call there's something with a Z, they're never going to get their movie watched.
You're totally right. Like the only things that don't have like A, B, C, and D seem like they're like blockbusters that probably had wide releases, Like
Right. That people know about already. Exactly.
come on, dude. Kevin Costner straight VOD, 3 Days to Kill. They're beating the A with the numbers, dude. That's
Yeah, the numbers at the very top.
Oh, I love Kevin Costner. I gotta watch that. Add to queue. All right. Sorry. So where were we? Is there any other questions that Tim, do you have for Dustin before Dustin tells us a little bit about his upcoming projects and ventures?
No, I mean, for me, the only thing I'd like to know from you, Dustin, if you want to do this after you talk about your stuff, I would just love to know what your favorite movie is. What how what you want to make in the future, and just stuff like that. I would just love to know like what's your favorite band, just just human questions.
Cool.
Sure. Well, I can kind of start with some of that. I guess that my ultimate all-time favorite hands down movie, and it's close because there's probably like 5 movies I would say are my favorite, but my ultimate favorite movie is 1974's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because it was the first movie I bought with my allowance, and I remember I had to watch it by myself in the basement one night, and it was like a bad EP mode, mono sound VHS, like on our crappy VCR TV set. And so most of the movie is just like loud screaming and chainsaws. And so I remember getting like a headache from it and going to bed early. And I remember that night hearing a motorcycle revving up down the street and freaking out that it was like Leatherface coming to get me. And so for every year, still up to this now in my life, about once a year, I have a Leatherface nightmare where I'm always trapped in some crazy secluded. It's always different. It's never the same. Always in a different secluded location. It's usually somewhere in the country, like a gas station or something that's empty, or like a building that's been abandoned. And it's like this terrifying nightmare that started with that. And I think just because it resonated with me on so many different levels, from like, the artistic nature in which it's shot, like the cinematography and the use of the music to kind of get under your skin, and the way that it builds and intensifies. And it was all these things that, as a young kid being exposed to that, it really affected me, but in a good way. It made me appreciate things in a different way. Like I started looking at films at an early age as art, and understanding them a little bit different than the way most people were watching them. And I think that because of that film, I became fascinated with those types of films. And so I could say like Halloween 1 and Halloween 3 are real close favorites of mine, but it always goes back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because that's the movie that sort of changed my life.
That's
Wow.
awesome. Yeah,
That's awesome.
I've only, it's funny. I really enjoy that movie, but I've only seen it once. But it was the most effective one, like first time watch I've ever had.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, there's movies that you watch that you get tired of them the more you see them, but then there's movies that you watch that like every time you watch it just gets better and better, and that's definitely a movie that does. Like I've seen it probably, I don't know, 50 or 60 times honestly, and it's still, I'm glued to the screen every time I watch it.
Yeah, that's a great film. It really is. Like that was, you know what I mean? Like that was horror before Halloween, and all those other slashers that came later. It was Texas Chainsaw. That's the one
it's that standard. Exactly. It was the first American slasher film.
Yeah, and it's got so many iconic images in there,
Yeah.
that you'll just never forget.
Well, and it's weird because it really did set the standard, because when you think about it now, like nothing can compare. Like they just don't, nothing's as resonating as that movie. And it was the first one. It still manages to be the most powerful one.
Definitely. Yeah. And they're gonna, I think, try to redo it again or remake it, I think, again.
I
Or some
know.
their sequel
I'm so
direct.
frustrated about that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
they
know,
just
guys. I really like the beginning. I thought that was a decent movie.
I didn't see that one. Not
It's
yet.
with Jordana
Really?
Brewster.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, that's the prequel that came out after the 2003 remake.
It's a decent movie.
I guess, yeah, I haven't seen it.
Well, I would say compared to the most recent one that was called Leatherface, yes, that was good.
Also, I'm really glad to hear some love for Halloween 3. I'm right there with you. Halloween 3 is the shit.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, it's like I said, next to Texas Chainsaw, it's like my favorite. I watch it at least once a year my whole life.
that's awesome. Yeah, I really like I really enjoyed the score for Halloween 3 and the film. I mean, it was a good film. It was very different than I think I was expecting, but uh different in a good way.
Well, it's
That was
very fluid, and I think that the first three Halloweens are all that way, where because John Carpenter is obviously a big part of the score, and I think that it's a movie where it's like the score and the imagery are one. Like it flows in such a manner that it's like it's all wrapped together. It's not like the score is just standing out or the shots are just standing out. It's all like one piece, and I think that's really
right.
hard to.
Yeah. Like the and same with like that opening credits for it was a trip.
Oh, I know. It's still the best of the series. I mean, the whole like computer, like 80s computer
Yeah.
low,
Yeah.
it's so ahead of the times.
That was a trip. That was really cool opening. Like I like that a lot.
And the
But
movie's message has just a lot to say about like advertising and its effects on children and how they're brainwashed and what they're told to like. Because that's very relevant still today. And I feel like when people talk about that movie, they don't even mention that. That's not what they talk about. They just talk
Well,
about the Michael
right.
Myers incident.
was that movie pre They Live, or was that after They Live?
Oh, it was pre-They Live. Pre-Live was 88. So this
Okay.
was six years before that.
So he ended up getting his full, the movie he really wanted to make,
Yeah.
which was They Live. Because I remember hearing like he didn't want to do Halloween 2, and then he was like, I'll do another Halloween, but it's gonna be this. So it's cool to see like, he didn't get to do his Halloween anthology movie, but he did get to make They Live, which is like practically the same thing. But
Yeah.
Well, it definitely. And I think I can understand more from my perspective, like today looking at it. It must be really frustrating for him because, he made this low budget independent film. A studio decided to basically take it over unless he was willing to do it a certain way, and he didn't want to. So they hired Rick Rosenthal to do part two. But then the studio wasn't happy and ended up hiring John Carpenter anyways to come in and quote unquote fix it. And so like if you watch the 80s broadcast of Halloween 2, it's a completely different movie. There's completely different scenes, a completely different ending, a completely different editing structure, because that was Rick Rosenthal's version that was basically PG-13 level. And they hired John Carpenter to come in and shoot the death scenes. All the death scenes in the movie were basically directed by him. And
hmm,
so
That's
I think
crazy.
I think at that point he was feeling a little bitter, so he wanted to do his own thing with Halloween 3. And then, of course, when that flopped, the studio basically took the series away and went on without him. And so I can,
Wow.
when I think about something like Meat Hook Massacre, just if that was just little cult hit, and then I had to come in and fix part 2, and then 3 isn't what I wanted, and it's just, I can imagine the frustration with that. And because now he sees the success of the Halloween series without him included. So I think it's cool now, like with the most recent one, that one that came out, what was it, a year ago, that involved him pretty heavily. And I thought that was really honorable that they did that.
I agree. Yeah, it was good that they brought him back. I thought that was really cool for the music and stuff with his son.
Definitely. Like it added a lot to the movie that I think was needed. He's a big part of it. He created the series, and it's kind of silly to kick him out of it. You know what I mean? Like why would you do that?
Yeah. The memorable tune, I mean,
Yeah.
the theme.
Exactly.
But didn't Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross do it for the last movie, or they
Oh,
just did their own version? Maybe like
I think it was just their own version, maybe.
okay.
Yeah.
That's the
But
only composer I would let like do something I loved. If Trent Reznor was like, I got this, I'd be like, you're right, you do got this.
Yeah, you do, man.
I have one more question, and that's about Matt told me you had some involvement in Sleepaway Camp 4, which I didn't even know was a thing. I thought I was a Sleepaway Camp fan, but what was your involvement?
Okay, so yeah, to kind of give some backstory to that. Well, first of all, there was a box set that came out that had Sleepaway Camp 1, 2, and 3. It was like the survival kit. It was called.
I
And it had
have
a bonus
that.
disc. Yeah, it had a bonus disc of production footage for an unfinished Sleepaway Camp 4 that was shot in 1992.
There's like a
Well,
girl laying at the beach, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, like on a yeah, she's sitting on like a dock, and she there's like a
Yes.
couple death scenes and stuff. And so what that was in 1992, Double Helix Films went to go make a part 4. It was actually supposed to be a clips movie where it was like they shot 2 days of footage, and it was supposed to have flashbacks, and the flashbacks were parts 1, 2, and 3, and we reveal a new twist at the end, and that was what part 4 was always supposed to be. But what happened was after one day of production, they went bankrupt and stopped shooting the movie. So they put that raw footage on that disc in that box set, but then jumped to it's like 2008. I was online originally. My name was Retro Horror Remix, and I did a bunch of fan edits. Fan edits, for people that don't know, are like when fans take versions of movies and recut them to their liking. Usually that means it's like a Star Wars movie where they put in the deleted scenes and they release it for free on the internet. And so I was doing that with horror movies. I had done over 100 of them. I had released online for free that were extended versions, composites, unique versions of different movies. And this guy that was a fan named John Kleiza in Australia discovered me that way, and he had the rights to Sleepaway Camp. He worked on that box set. And so he wanted to find someone that would be willing to go and finish part 4 today. And so what that meant was taking that raw footage and doing the best we could with it to make it still a clips movie using flashbacks and get it to feature length. So starting in 2008, I worked on it, and I worked on it for free for 4 years as the editor until 2012. And then it finally came out to DVD in 2013. So I was the editor on that, and that's sort of what jump started my career. But then about a year ago, the same guy, John Kleiza, who still has the rights, the Australian rights, hired me to film new scenes for part 2. There's a sequence in the opening of that movie where TC is telling the ghost story around the fire, and he's telling a story. I was hired to go and film what the story he's telling of the girl in the
Oh,
mausoleum that finds her dead boyfriend. So we
yeah.
filmed so we filmed that, and so it's been released on the Australian version. And then I also filmed a couple years prior that Shout Factory put on the Blu-ray. It's called Whatever Happened to Molly, and it was the original ending of part 2 in the script, where Molly runs off and she gets impaled by a fence, and then we show her corpse. So we'd filmed that. I got hired to film that a couple years prior, and that was on the Shout Factory Blu-ray. And so this Australian release had the new footage I shot for the story at the beginning, and then the new ending I shot. So I actually was second unit director essentially on the Australian release of Sleepaway Camp 2.
that is so awesome.
Right.
It's funny. So I bought that box set. So I'm a big CKY fan. And Darren Miller is married to Felissa Rose. Felissa
Right.
Rose is obviously, we all know who she is. So I inevitably got into Sleepaway Camp because of CKY, and I bought that box set at Best Buy
Yeah.
randomly, and I didn't even know that there was Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3. Now I love them, but back then I was kind of like, what is this? Um, but I remember seeing that extra disc and putting it in and being like, what is this? What is this? This is like a bunch of like daily
It's literally
scenes and like
30 minutes of outtakes. Yeah.
yeah. So that's so cool because this is the first time I'm hearing about Sleepaway Camp 4. So I'm gonna have to track that down and check it out, as well as the extra scenes that you were talking about. That's pretty awesome. So you learn something new every day, especially about things that you thought you liked.
You know,
Yeah, no,
definitely.
that's
And as a
awesome.
director, it's something that, it's helped my career a lot, and it's something that I can be proud of. It's, as a fan, it's definitely something to be cool, cool that I'm involved in.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. Like that's like really fun. Like fun and cool because like if you're a collector too, like I mean, who doesn't want to watch these films remastered on Blu-ray? And these the Scream Factory releases are always awesome. From
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
definitely. And that led to a lot more work. Like just recently, they did a theatrical screening of a version I edited of Slumber Party Massacre 2 because I made an uncut composite of that they put on their Blu-ray, and we actually got to screen it recently. So that was pretty awesome too.
yeah, hell yeah. And you got a screening of Jaws of LA
Yep,
coming
at
up.
the same theater because of that connection, because of that. And see, that's what it's all about is making these connections because I had done that work on Sleepaway Camp. I got involved in Slumber Party Massacre, which then had a screening, and then now that theater showing my shark movie.
Hell yeah. Tim, your music's gonna be on the big screen.
That's crazy.
On the 20th.
Yeah, dude. But I love that. That's a really cool like bit of, movie horror cinema fun kind of knowledge, to be able to hear those stories. So thanks for sharing that with us, Dustin.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I still gotta track down those. I gotta just pull the trigger and buy those Scream Factory Sleepaway Camp versions, but one day.
Yeah, definitely. That's how I always feel. I'm like, one day.
Yeah. And then you're gonna get it, and there's no slipcover.
Yeah. I want that
Uh,
slip cover.
so
Well, granted, they're expensive, So I only get free copies because I worked on them. So I don't blame you.
Yeah.
so let's talk about this movie Meat Hook Massacre. I've heard a lot about it from Matt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Dustin, tell him, give him a little history of Meat Hook.
Okay. In 2015, it was actually this company, Manor Video, that specialized in VHS releases. I had made an agreement with them to direct two movies. One was going to be Meat Hook Massacre, and the other one was a movie called Faces of Dying, which was like Faces of Death, basically.
Mm.
And so I did both films, and they did the releases, and they sold out like on the first day or something of Meat Hook Massacre. And I think he had the rights for about a year. And so when the rights came back to me, I decided I'd make a sequel because the first one was fairly popular and I was putting it out on other mediums. So I did a sequel, part two, that I put on Amazon Prime, and it was somewhere around like I want to say $3,000 I made on Amazon Prime the first month with Meat Hook Massacre 2, which is an unheard of.
Nice.
It was like insanity. And so I was like, well, shit, we got to like make this a thing. So we ended up originally, I was just going to make some merchandise. Like we had a comic book made for, it was like a prequel story. I had an action figure made and I had a Nintendo game made. And so those were popular and those were selling out. And so I decided, I was like, well, I'll produce a sequel. So I approached this director, Jim DeVault, who lives in Texas, about doing a part three based on the comic book. So he agreed to do it. He went and made it. They made the movie. It's based on the comic book. It's a prequel. And then about that time, I moved out to California, and then I hired John Ward, who went and made part four in Vegas. And about the same time, I was like, well, we need to kind of wrap up the series. It's coming towards an end. So I returned to the series and made Meat Hook Massacre the final chapter, which was part five. And we shot that. Was it this last spring, Matt? Was that this year?
Yeah, that was this year, I think. Or
Oh,
yeah,
God.
was it?
I think it was. I think it was like March or April or something. It was like kind of rainy. But yeah, so it was like around then we did part five. And originally that was going to be the end of the series because me and Robert Langford, Robert plays Bubba in all the movies. We agreed that this was a series we were just going to do together. It was like our thing where I'd be the director and he'd be the killer. So he got a star in all. And so we agreed with part five, it would be the end. And then we were going to start a new franchise called Sicko the Scarecrow, which we are still doing. And the first one's going to production soon. So when we did part five at the end, we kind of got teary eyed and had a heart to heart about how we were, kind of sad that it was over and, but it's cool. We're starting something else. And so he went back to Nebraska, which he's from. He's flying out here to still be in him. He went back to Nebraska and some time passed. And then a lot of people were talking about how I should do a sequel still because we left part five open with a cliffhanger. And they're like, oh, come on, you can't really end it. You can't really end it. Can't really end it. And I was like, well, if I do a six, I'm just going to produce again. I'm kind of stepping away. Me and Robert decided to leave it. I'm going to pass it on to somebody else. But then it slowly started kind of morphing because I passed it on to Jeremiah Douglas, who also wrote Sicko the Scarecrow. I was so impressed with that script that I hired him to direct Meat Hook Massacre 6. And so in the process of that, he started writing in characters from the other films. And I had already gone and offered the role of Bubba for part 6 to somebody else because I figured Robert wasn't going to be a part of it anymore. I wasn't a part of it anymore. But then Sis, who's a character in part 2, the one I did, she came out to California to visit. And so we ended up being able to write her into part 6. We wrote a scene for her. And once that happened, it slowly started to involve more and more characters from the franchise. And so finally, I ended up calling up Robert one morning. And I'm like, hey, you got to come back. We're doing a part 6. So he was all about it. And he came back, and we just recently shot that. We finished it. It was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. I actually just shot the last scene. Was that a week ago we did that? Last weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just shot the last stuff last weekend, and a part 7's coming out soon. Jeremy Pear is going to be directing part 7, and then I'm returning for the actual last installment, which is going to be part 8, and it's Bubba versus the Blood Beast.
Yeah. So you're gonna, and so that's gonna cross over with
both franchises, because at that point there'll be 2 Blood Beast movies plus that one, and there'll be 8 Meat Hook Massacres. So they're going to kind of take each other out, and we'll end the franchises.
That's great. That's fun. That sounds like a lot of fun. I always like the versus battle, the slasher villains going up against each other.
Well, and it's grown, I didn't foresee any of this, before it happened. It's like when I made the first movie, it was this cheap little movie. We shot it on VHS because it takes place in the 80s. And I'm like, oh, it'll just be this fun little thing I'm going to do and just forget about it in a year because I do so many movies. But it ended up growing. And I was like, okay, we'll do 2. Okay, we'll do 3. Okay, we'll do 4. And now it's like, damn, we're like doing a part 8 to Meat Hook Massacre. Like, what? I never imagined.
Yeah. Tim, so are you gonna check out Meat Hook?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like when I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch Trancers. I'm like, wait a second, there's 6 of them. That's gonna take me a little bit of time. So I really want to check them out. I I mean, I'm excited. I think it's just cool, like, to put something out and have it sell out like immediately, and then have this continuous growing fan base, and then to the point where you can start, like, it's kind of like Kevin Smith, where like he's made so many movies that now you can start referencing the previous movies you've made, and you have this like little universe. And I think that's just so cool. So I definitely want to check them out. I mean, I certainly can't just start with like Meat Hook Massacre 4. So
Right.
I gotta go back, and I won't know what's going on. So I'm definitely excited to see them.
Well, and I owe a lot of what, my popularity now to that series, because I think that all the bigger genre directors have something like, their Halloween or their Nightmare on Elm Street. And it's like, I didn't anticipate it at the time, but I think that overall it's probably what I'm most known for, because there's just so many installments, and it's a big homage to Texas Chainsaw and 3 on a Meat Hook and those old, kind of grimy grindhouse slasher movies. And I think that resonates with horror fans, and they like the old school approach, because I've talked to Matt about this a lot, that I'm an acquired taste. I've been told that a lot. I have a very particular approach to the way that I do films. And I think that once you've seen something and you kind of understand the style, it can kind of really pull you into the universe, like you called it. And it's this whole universe I've created over time that I didn't even realize that it sort of exists now. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
And your movie doesn't start with A. It's not a Meat Hook Massacre.
Yeah.
You have success over it, and it starts with an M. So congratulations.
Yeah, that is quite the feat, I guess.
Yeah, no, that is in this day and age. I mean, yeah, to be able to do that many sequels, that's awesome. Because
and just to hear, there's actual fans, like that reach out about it, and it's endearing. You know what I mean? It's like, well, it's cool to know that I'm doing something that means something.
Definitely, dude. Yeah, and Robert is, he loves that role, and he does such a great job.
Oh, yeah. It means the world to him, and it means the world to me that it means the world to him. Because it's very defining of who he is now. He's the killer in the Meat Hook Massacre series, and he's very proud of it, and he does a really good job. I wouldn't have anybody else do it.
Yeah, hell yeah. Tim, do you have any other questions?
I think I'm good. I mean, this has been
Dustin?
yeah, do you?
I want to ask Dustin real quick. any updates that you'd like to talk about? Aside from Meat Hook, do you have anything in the pipeline? SCS, Sicko,
Right.
Scarecrow you brought up?
Yeah, there's quite a few things kind of happening. I'll run through real quick here. There's obviously the launch of SCS Entertainment, which is just a variation of SoCal Cinema Studios. That's going to kind of take place January 1st. And with the launch of that is going to be the Scary Six, which is sort of my own full moon deadly 10, I guess you could put it. We're producing 6 films that are all sequels or remakes to other films that I have the rights over. So that's all sort of happening right then. And I'm doing one of them, which is going to be Tales for the Campfire 3, which actually you guys are involved, of course, Matt Leal has shot some stuff for me.
Oh,
so
cool.
I'm in production. Yeah, I'm in production with that now. And then at the beginning of the year, I'm doing 2 erotic thrillers, which are going to be my first erotic thrillers. One's The Last Roommate, and the other one is called Dracula's Daughter. And Julie Philpott stars in Last Roommate, and Selena D stars in Dracula's Daughter. And then, of course, there's Sicko the Scarecrow, and Jeremiah is going to be directing that, and I'll just be producing. And then right after that, I'm going to be doing Hell of the Screaming Undead at the end of March. And that's a zombie movie that's going to have Mike Ferguson and Jasper Cole starring in it. So that's sort of my next 4 months. Oh, and right now, I'm doing Hollyweird. I'm finishing that right now. I'm doing the last interviews for my documentary Hollyweird.
Woof.
You are a busy man.
I know, I can't even remember them all, like it just kind of popped in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm directing this movie right now.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's great. No, and you said all that real quick. I'm sorry we didn't give you didn't give you a lot of time to elaborate, but I know we've had quite a number of conversations and topics covered today.
Definitely. And, there's always a bunch of stuff. I'm used to rattling them off at the end of the interview, so it's all good.
Oh, yeah, no, but if there's any other specifics, though, of anything, I don't want you to feel like you have to stop talking about it either, because, because we are interested. And yeah, no, because I know like you have a ton of projects planned that you're already in the middle of, as you said. So it's cool to kind of get the scoop on those, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Well, and people obviously can just follow me on Facebook, and I put 3 or 4 updates a day there, so they can keep up that way.
Perfect. Yeah. And you have a streaming service as well through VHX Vimeo.
Yep, on demand. So check that out for sure. I think there's an average of about 5 titles added a month. So there's literally 2 or 3 dozen titles on there now.
Yeah, no, it's a big library, and you just had a Christmas special go up, which is really cool. I checked that one out already.
Angle as yeah, that was a lot of fun. She hosted Silent Night Bloody Night too, and she did a great job.
Yeah, she's awesome. But yeah, Tim, I know you had it's your choice to pick the film for the next viewing.
Yeah, I've got it.
Let's hear it.
I went through it's Meat Hook Massacre 1. No, I'll check that out. I'll check that out another time. I've got a movie that I have here. It's called All Through the House. It came out in 2015. It's a Christmas horror movie because, this month of December is just slipping through our fingers. So I know it kind of sucks.
Yeah, because I know you're a big Christmas guy.
Oh yeah, Christmas time is it only comes once a year.
That's true.
As I believe the Carpenters said that one. So it's called All Through the House, 2015. It's an hour and 28 minutes. It's Tubi TV. It's on there. It says a deranged killer dressed as Santa Claus slays everyone in his path as he makes way to the most notorious house in town in this holiday horror.
Wow. And let me ask you, Tim, does it pass your poster test?
Oh yeah.
It's got that Santa on it, like looking all freaky over the house, right?
The one I'm looking at, he's got a pair of hedge clippers.
Yeah.
And have you seen it?
I haven't seen. I have a pictorial memory, so I can recall almost any movie by its artwork. Once I've seen the artwork, it doesn't go away. So yeah, I've seen the cover, and I know it's like an indie director that's kind of on my level, but I don't know. I'm not sure who directed it. Do you have it handy?
Todd Nunes or Todd Nunes?
Yes, yeah, Todd Nunes. Oh, he did. Oh crap! He just did a really awesome movie before that too. He's kind of a new independent director. He's pretty
Scary
good.
Larry, right? Scary Larry.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
That's cool. Scary Larry. He's got like a killer clown mask. That's kind of creepy.
I did
Cool,
see
man.
Through the House. Yeah, I did watch it. Duh. Yeah, it's a good.
You're
That's
like
cool,
I
man.
you're like I produced it.
Like, oh, dude, that's part of my catalog now.
No,
No,
that
that's
so
awesome, though.
yeah. What do you remember from it? Well, aside from the ending. Don't tell us that.
Yeah, don't tell me the ending. No.
I thought that it was a good throwback to. It was very similar to Black Christmas, the original, in
Awesome.
tone. I thought that it was shot very well. It had some really good suspense and death scenes. So it's an impressive independent film.
That's awesome.
Perfect. I am trying to find time to rewatch the I love the remake of Black Christmas, and I am so excited.
So bad.
Wait, what?
Black Xmas, yeah, from like
Oh, yeah.
2005
I
or
love
whatever.
it.
Yeah, that's so good.
And I am so excited, even though it looks a little bit different. I'm excited for this Friday. Black Christmas remake comes
I
out.
don't know.
For the purists, I could see why they wouldn't want to see it.
I gotta see the remake first. I've only seen the original. I haven't seen the second one.
I think that the 2005 one is actually better. I know that that's sacrilegious to say because I'm saying it's better than the original, but the original is a good film. But I feel like, it's not exactly a classic for a reason. It drags in parts, and the acting could be better, and there's issues with the film. And I think that what they really did with the reboot was sort of like lovingly address the issues of the original and just try and present the story better, and they did.
Hey,
See,
I'm with you, man. I really love. I mean, also I like anything from 2002 to like 2007, but aside from that, I love. I think it's so much more entertaining than the Bob
Yeah.
Bob Clark. Bob Clark made it. Yeah, it's so
Also made
much
a
more
Christmas
interesting.
story, which is crazy.
So weird.
Yeah, that is weird. Bob Clark. Is that Christmas Story?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's so strange, man, to do those two.
That's classic. That's a Christmas classic right there. So it's strange both of those.
Yeah, definitely. A Christmas Story is awesome. I know that's not VodPod,
I love
but
that movie. I still watch it every year. That's great.
It's a great film. Oh, it's so funny. It's so funny. Just laugh thinking about it. But
so all through the house. There we go.
Dude, I love it. Great pick. I'm looking forward to watching this on Tubi TV. Dustin's got some films on Tubi TV as well. If you guys are interested in seeing some of his films, he's also got stuff on Amazon. And then, like we said, the SoCal Cinema streaming through VHX Vimeo app, which is really cool.
Yes. And recently Fandango and Redbox has Nemesis 5 also. So.
Right. I forgot about the Redbox and Fandango.
Well, my manager would not let me forget, so I had to make sure to mention it.
That's awesome. But yeah, so I mean, well, from Tim and I, thank you for taking the time to come on here and talk your films with us, other films with us. I had a really great time.
Yeah. Thank you. This is a blast.
Definitely. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, and hope you have a good night, holiday season. I'll be in touch, obviously, to work on some stuff with you, hang out. But
see you soon.
yeah. But hopefully we'll have you on again at some point. Thanks again, Dustin. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks, guys.